Hello, Namaste. Thanks our panelists and audience for taking time to join us this morning. Before giving brief intro of our panelists, I will say a few words why these panelists. If you have seen the theme of IMD 2020, you would remember the keywords diversity of perspective that makes communities and personnel of museums, and champions tools for identifying and overcoming bias in what they display and the stories they tell. So, while curating this celebration, I thought when we are concerned with the perspective that makes communities, then we must have their representation in this conversation. So, on one hand, we have museum leaders such as Miss Goranka Horjan. She is CEO of Ethnographic Museum in Zagreb, Croatia, president of ICOM INTERCOM, one of the largest international committee. She has held several important positions in past. Her bio is available on the FB event page of IMD 2020. I would request my colleague Titas to share the link in some time so that everyone can have the detailed introductions of the speakers. I welcome you, Goranka. Can we have the spotlight on Goranka so everybody knows?
Hello, everybody.
Our next speaker is Terry Nyambe. He works as a curator of histology at Livingstone Museum in Livingstone, Zambia. He is also been an executive board member of ICOM since 2016 and have held many important positions in the past. I welcome you, Terry. Can we have Terry? I think his video is not on. Our third speaker is Mr. Zahangir Hussain. Jahangir ji is a curator, Asiatic Society Heritage Museum, chairperson ICOM Bangladesh, and board member ICOM ASPAC. He is former director of Bangladesh National Museum and have held many important positions in the past. I welcome you, Dada. Our fourth and last speaker from museums is Dr.Vismay Raval. He is curator of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel Museum, situated in Science Center, Surat, and in charge curator of Fort. Vismay has worked in important roles in museums as conservator and museum keeper. I welcome you, Vismay.
Thank you. Namaste.
So these are the speakers from museums, and on other hand we have frontline workers representing communities. Ruchira Gupta. She is an Emmy-winning journalist who founded the Indian anti-sex trafficking organization Apne. She is presenting and running 1millionmeals.org campaign to get food for victims of sex trafficking during COVID-19 crisis. I welcome Ruchira. Ruchira is facing some problem in getting in. So once I finish the introductions, I will just do something about it along with my colleagues. Our second speaker is Nobina Gupta. She is an artist and believes in socially engaged art practice. She is founder of Disappearing Dialogues and works closely with wetland communities in Bengal. Welcome, Nobina. Our last speaker for this morning is Shuvojit Moulik. He is research fellow at Chittaranjan National Cancer Institute. He has been working with transgender healthcare and well-being, both physical and mental. I welcome you, Shuvojit.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
We'll start the conversation now. So there is no presentation, as you all know, and we will have the conversation. I will put my first question to Shubhajit. Shubhajit, your work is around mental well-being and healthcare of transgenders, a community that faces isolation and separation from their very own families, whereas they were very much integrated part of the society in ancient India. And in fact, during the ancient time, they held some important positions in the personal lives of monarchs and were also regarded close to gods in Indian mythology. I remember one name that comes to my mind is Sri Kandi, and another is Lord Shiva's manifest as Ardhanarishwar, and we all worship that form. So, what my question to you is, what role, in your vision, museums can play in establishing gender fluidity as part of our culture? And I would request, once Shuvojit has put his question, I would request Dr. Vismay to respond to it, followed by uh, Mr. Jahangir, because Bangladesh is very much, had been very much part of India, and we share the same culture and tradition. So over to you, Shuvojit.
Yeah, thanks for your question. It's a very pertinent question in a way that how museums or public spaces or these kind of spaces where entertainment has a different value and meaning, both for the society and the communities concerned. So there are uh, just to start that there are various ways where uh, a museum can actually have can lead a dialogue in establishing communities together. So, and here establishing communities is inclusion. So I think the first thing that a museum needs to do is having different kinds of art, different kind of art forms from different communities. Like what you mentioned about, say, Ardhanarishwar or Srikhandi, there are various art forms which are there, which can be actually curated for these kind of art museums. Also, there is another things that a museum need to have. Say, for example, if you see the Indian laws, there is no such things for public spaces or anything. Like there is no such discriminatory law for public spaces for anything. But then there is Article 15, which guarantees a fundamental right to access public spaces. Here, where a museum has a huge role, because there are few things. One of the things that is very important here is the availability of materials in the museum for communities. So this is again something which includes, as I said, the art forms, and which also includes a physical accessibility. So physical accessibility is also something that a museum needs to undertake, both for transgender individuals or individuals with disabilities or from other communities. Then another thing is the acceptability. So the acceptability of the change that we see in a gender dysphoric conditions. So this is again something that has to be imbibed in the museum. Another thing is the adaptability. Every day we are having different updates of different kind of genders, and then we are exposed to different forms of gender now. So we need to adapt also with our progressive views. And lastly, the most important thing is the appropriateness of the whole space of the museum. Like, say, for example, the transgender people faces various kinds of discrimination. So one of the discrimination, as we all know, is bullying, or a kind of, bullying, or a form of neglected, like they're not being welcomed in a place. So this is something that we describe with appropriateness, where cultural, like we can welcome them culturally. So these are the few things I think a museum has to include, so that to include all the cultures and the communities involved.
Absolutely valid points, Shuvojit. I will request Dr. Vismay to please respond to Shuvojit's comments and what he feels is needed for the transgender community to be inclusive, to feel inclusive in the museums.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be a panelist in this important webinar. There were lots of questions about the inclusiveness. I'll just mention what our organization is. Our museum and science center is being governed by Surat Municipal Corporation. Besides providing many basic social amenities or the services, we also have a zoo, aquarium, botanical gardens, We have conserved water reservoirs, many lakes in the city. We also have a very effective municipal school boards. We have 329 schools. We are providing education in 7 different languages, which are Gujarati, English, Hindi, Marathi, Odia, Urdu, and Telugu. There are thousands of underprivileged students from all kind of social background are getting free primary education in these schools. And all our different amenities like zoo, aquarium, botanical park, our science center, our museum, the newly developed or the restored Surat Castle, historical Surat Castle. We have no tickets for persons with disabilities. We do not have any kind of ticketing charges for kids from juvenile home. We do not have any kind of tickets for kids from orphanages or the girls from the women protection houses. So we have already taken this kind of steps. The schools which are already present all over the city and different kind of social background students are getting education there. They can come to any of our facility as their study tools. So the kind of inclusiveness is already there. Apart from that, what I think, which is a very difficult thing in India than many other countries, that India is a very vast country with a very vast population. We are, billions on billions of people. We speak a lot of languages. There are more than 22 languages. So physically challenged people are, of course, there. Whether they are visually impaired or the hearing or speaking difficulties. We also have people with the learning difficulties. We also have to do a lot of for them. There are very much socially neglected groups, whether it's LGBTs or students from kids from juvenile home or orphanages. So we also have to do a lot of for them. There are many people who will be after COVID-19 emotionally hurt or emotionally disturbed because of unstable financial things. There will be maybe there will be a lot of job cuts. There will be unemployment. So for them also we have to do something that they get motivated. They move ahead in their life with some productive or good habits in their life. So museum has a lot of important role to play in that. We also have people who are geographically disconnected. So a person living very far away, or a person who are living in a countries which are politically conflicting with each others, or people who are living in a political public wars kind of countries. So there are also these kind of people who require inclusiveness in the museum. There are financially weak people. Even though if they want to visit museum, but the museums which charges ticket very high, they also require some sort of inclusiveness. There are people who are uneducated or not educated enough to understand the museum collection. So before they visit the museum, and instead of getting demotivated to visit any museum further, they also require some sort of motivational program or some sort of basic learning program before they visit to the museum. So there is also one thing what museum has to do. There are also lot of motivated people who lives in a city who do not visit their museums which are already there in their city. This is a common story around the globe in almost every city. So museum also have to play a role in motivating people who are living nearby, organizing some sort of activities for them. I also have a point to raise that post-COVID, there will be also a problem, that what activities museum have been doing very effectively till now, like interactive objects or interactive kiosks they have in their exhibition, narrow routing paths. So we also have to think a lot, how we are going to carry forward this activity which are already there. We also have to think about digital platform and using of social media tools, because whatever we are creating, it might not be relevant to people who are educationally not educationally constrained. They do not understand the subjects, or they do not know how to use this thing. They, like in India, we have a linguistic diversity, so we have to use a lot of universally visual signs in that, so people can attend that. We also have to think about how we are going to move forward with the mass gathering or the group visits or the field works or the intense workshops what we are creating till now. So we will be requiring heavy protocols and clear SOPs that how we can move forward. So these are my points what we have done till now, but looking forward to the future, we have to think a lot than just only thinking about digital inclusiveness or maybe using of social medias or maybe thinking about one or two group. We have to think in such a way that whoever visits a museum are guest, and a person which requires special attentions are the chief guest. If we can treat them like that, we will not have any kind of problem in that. And we also have to think about SSS module for the staff. If the staff is sensitive, if the staff is sensible, then we won't have any problem in tackling any kind of situation of inclusiveness. So these are my point of view.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there is a lot that has been done, and there is a lot that is yet to be done. Shuvojit, I'll just spend one more minute. Do you feel that your answer has been the answer by Dr. Vismay Raval had been satisfactory?
Yeah, I think it's quite good that the way they have set up things for like promoting inclusiveness. But then there are also few things, maybe like say for example, gender neutral toilets. If like just to make not toilets for boys and girls, but then gender neutral toilets are the things that a museum needs to have in this kind of space where LGBT is a huge population now. So I think these kind of things can be implemented also.
Thank you. I will request Dada Zahangir ji to please reflect how the situation in this is in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh shares the same tradition, similar tradition at least, similar traditions and similar challenges to some extent as India. So how is it in Bangladesh, Zahangir ji? I think his video is stuck. Saurav, can we unmute him?
There's a problem with his
With
audio and
so
video.
okay, no problem. I will go back to him once he joins us. In the meantime, I'll tell the audience that we will be answering their questions at the end, and they can write their questions in the Q&A panel. My colleague will be choosing the questions from there, so please keep them brief and so that the panelists can understand them properly, and put the name that you want, which speaker you want to answer. In case your question is not answered due to limitation of time, we will ask the concerned panelists to respond to it later in writing. There may be network hindrances like this just happened. Please be patient and kind. And the session is live on FB. If any one of you face problem in Zoom, please join on FB at #KCC in Kolkata. The session is being recorded for documentation purpose, and for any inquiry you can write at kcc@akst.org.in. So since Dada has joined us, Dada, I would ask you that you listen to Shuvojit's concern and the challenges that transgenders are facing and had been facing actually for quite some time now. So how is the situation in Bangladesh? How do you handle this?
Thank you very much for inviting me and joining this session. I heard that Mr. Shuvojit and also Raval. And in Bangladesh, you visited Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is very highly densely populated country, and the museums running in the Bangladesh are very with different problems, especially financial problems there. So our national museum is a general museum, and it represents the all kinds of culture, and we have several galleries, about 45 galleries, and we included all ethnic groups, natural history, ancient history, ethnography, and decorative art, and modern art, contemporary art, art civilization, and in question of diversity, we can see some diversity as there with the representation, with the display of the antiques, and actually in modern time, most of the countries of the world are going for the thematic museum. So in Bangladesh, we are also establishing the more thematic museum. At present, I am working this the museum, the Asiatic Heritage Museum. This is also thematic museum, and in the National Museum, we have also established some galleries with the thematic way, and so we made some diversity, and in regard of inclusion, we can partly there are some inclusion in the museums in some museums in the part of our country, but whole museums are not in the inclusion process. So our ethnic group, the religious group, and marginal group should be included all the museums. But in the general museum there are some, but it is not in the sufficient. The other part, my colleague Mr. Dr. Vismay said that if we go for free entrance of to the museum, the inclusion of the general people may be increased, and we can include the people and who are less income people. They will be interested. Usually, I have seen that the museum general people are not museum minded. So the problem is the inclusion of the public is very difficult. Where you have to invite them or involve them by taking the steps or taking the program, initiating the programs involving the exhibition, seminar, symposium, or cultural function. Then they will be more interested. And some museums are trying to do this, and I hope this will end. This will, if we try this way, then it will improve, and the diversity will be improved. And some the diversity also we have seen in some museums, and in this way we'll face the challenges of the modern world. And thank you for this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jahangir ji. And I think it's very good that in this conversation we are really having the people for whom we want to work and we work, and the people who are working. So it's a very good interaction. And Shuvojit, thank you so much for putting your question. I hope that to some extent you got some kind of positive feeling that yes, something will happen. But I would also request that as a representative, you and other people to also start talking with museums, that where is it that we can do better work than what we are doing right now, because at times we feel we are doing very good job, but there is another perspective to it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah.
Hi, Ruchira, welcome. Finally, you are able to join. My next question is to you.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great to see you. Ruchira, you work with a community that deals with social stigma and isolation. And when you look at the children of these women, do you envisage their interaction or representation in museums? You spend a lot of time in US, and hence the scope of my question is not limited to within the boundaries of India. So it would be nice if you could reflect upon the difference, if any, on this in both the countries. And I will ask Goranka to respond to this. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to start with an ancient Indian tradition, Namaste. This is particularly a wonderful tradition now in the times of COVID, where we realize that shaking hands and all of that can be so infectious. And so I just want to start again by Namaste, which is I bow my head in respect to all of you who are in the panel. And I want to just explain what I do a little bit for people who are new to my work. I am the founder of an organization which works against sex trafficking, and we work inside red light areas with women and children. The women have been prostituted when they were teenagers, and they have children who are growing up in the red light areas. So I work with both groups and both ages. And one of the things I notice when I work in the red light areas is the high rates of PTSD. Because of the repeated violence that the women are subjected to, and often the children. Also, what I notice when I work in these areas is that the women have been silenced for so long that they are unable to even articulate that they have an issue or a problem. So I have been grappling with this in many different ways, that how do you help someone tell their story, and how do you get that story into mainstream society so that it builds empathy and understanding. And I have used art in the places that I work in. In Calcutta, of course, there are lots of artists like Chitravanu Mazumdar, and in Delhi, there have been artists like Bharti Kher and Meetu Sen and Vibha Galhotra who have, and from Italy, there has been an artist called Janine von Tangen. In New York, there have been artist managers like Kate Chernush, etc., who has a fantastic website called Artworks for Freedom. And all of them have been helping me to find answers to these questions. That how do I use art to break the silence? How do I use art to overcome trauma? And how do I use art to communicate with mainstream society? And these artists have interacted with the women, and we have created workshops called Art Resilience to overcome trauma, so that women can tell their stories through art, children can tell their stories through art to, sort of overcome the shame and the fear and the guilt they feel. And, art in many forms. One is drawing and painting, but it's also making objects, it's storytelling, it's theater art, miming, all kinds of different things we've used. And we've turned it into like a model now, which we have a manual for. Because in most red light areas, there are no counselors, there are no psychiatrists or psychologists or anything. We have to make do with what we have. Then the art which is generated through that, we would love to hold exhibitions of that to be able to get this out. And we haven't had much luck in that. At one point, the American Center in Delhi offered me their space, and we showed the art of women who were victimized by the sex industry there. But beyond that, nothing. Famous artists like Bharti Kher and Meetu Sen and all have come forward and worked with our artists and produced artwork, and Vibha also. And that artwork is just lying around because we are trying to figure out how do we get a museum to put it up with the with in fact putting captions by what the women are saying, the children are saying. And we have approached people. It's really, really hard. I have spoken to even Christie's to see, can we do something like an auction? Maybe that will generate publicity. Maybe somebody out there will respond to it in some fashion. And Dipanjana, who's in New York, has said, yes, she will help me. So I'm trying to cobble together different ways, but I find museums particularly hard nuts to crack. This is something I would love to hear your thoughts on, Gora.
Thank you so much for your elaborated experience as what you're doing already, and you wish that museum should be doing. May I request Goranka, if you can reflect upon that, how it is in your country, in Croatia, how do you represent this community?
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm thankful to Kolkata Center for Creativity and ICOM India to invite me to this panel. Well, every part of the world has its own challenges, I would say, and only this global pandemic united us in approach, I may say. So something good may finally come out of it also. In Croatia, we had a recent experience of war, and this puts also a challenge in front of many museums, how to actually show the 5 years of the warfare, what situations preceded, and how to deal with the consequences of war, especially in border regions where people were really affected and where some towns were completely destroyed. People were captured and kept in prison camps, and of course returned with trauma. Many mothers and women lost their husbands, their sons. So it was really a sensitive issue, above all because some of the minorities took part in the war on the opposite side. So you also had to balance, the feelings of the people who shared the same space and were at opposite sides, living together, were neighbors. So this was really a very, very, and still is a very delicate moment for all of us to reflect. How to be sensitive and how to be responsible actually is in line with INTERCOM's key messages for this time, and that's leadership, partnership, responsibility, and relevance. I think museums have to be aware that their role is crucial to create a socially acceptable and coherent space for all. Not to be misused to further somehow spread conflict, but also to speak true. Museums are in a unique position today. They are still the institutions that people trust. Unlike media, for example, or politicians, still people think that when they come to the museum, they will see and they will get the information that is correct and that can somehow give them a deeper and a right insight into what happened, no matter what the subject or the problem is. This is also connected, the colleague Gupta spoke about the activities, how you can interact with vulnerable groups, with socially sensitive groups. Many museums are doing this, my ethnographic museum in particular, with Roma people, with minorities, we cooperate with hospitals, etc. But I would also like to say that an important thing for museums is how do they collect the things. It's not only the activities, it's the collections. They have to have active collections, the collections that speak about the relevant themes and topics. And this is very, very important because, for example, what we are going to collect now, how we are going to transmit the messages also depends on these sustainable solutions that we find in museums. And I think this is also a crucial question for museums as institutions.
Thank you so much, Goranka. It was indeed enlightening, and it's actually, in a way, good to know that we all face similar challenges across borders, and it's more than what we are doing. We need to do to bring communities to museums by reaching out to them. Ruchira, I would ask you if your question was answered to your satisfaction.
Yes, somewhat. No question is completely complete and no answer is completely complete. But, Goranka went into the place I wanted to hear from because she has worked with Romas and she has included their work in a museum. So maybe that can be an example that we begin to share more of such practices with other museum curators and other museum directors, and maybe that might encourage them to include survivor art, to include art of the marginalized and the vulnerable. And also, not just include it. And you said something very important, Goranka, about including it in the collection, because then it gives a sense of prestige to that art. It's not like just drawings made and thrown away, but it's in a museum collection. It gives identity, it gives respect, it gives value, and we never value the marginalized. So this would be a big step in overcoming discrimination and marginalization. How can we create more conversations and displays on this would be really great. If you have any ideas in your experience with Romas, maybe because there are so many people from South Asia in this panel, and they might be able to take some things and we can do something with it. Because it really is my dream that they're treated as equals, not just that we are doing sometimes I feel it's almost voyeuristic when photographers come and interact with my NGO Apne, and they say, we are going to do photography. That's fine. We love having our work documented. But some of it is outside in, not inside out, the eye. And the inside out eye can be so different, and that is what someone who is a survivor herself, a victim of the sex industry herself, when she draws, when she writes, when she expresses. And I remember a drawing made by children of the red light area. And I was looking at the perspective, and it was kind of interesting because this child had drawn the mother from the back. So I could see the backside of the women standing, and what I could see was the faces of the men coming towards the women. So it was the opposite of what we see, because normally people take photographs of the women looking like caricatures standing on the road. But this was a child looking at the customer coming to the house or the brothel from sitting inside the room and watching his mother standing from behind. So the museums can play such a big role in helping us do that, because it changes perspective. It will change our consciousness.
If I may just to add, what is important is what you, Ruchira, just said, this partnership. So when we did the exhibitions, we actually had partners with the Roma community and actually signed the agreement, and there were traveling exhibitions like from Northern Macedonia coming to Croatia, Slovenia. So we tried also to include not only one country but the region as well. I just forgot to say that European Union also encourages such programs, not only in cultural sector, but in a social sector. So we have some calls we can apply for funding for such projects. Not only minorities or some different social groups, but also, for example, for women after 55 who lost employment and are really having huge difficulties to find a job. So you can as a museum participate in such program, somehow helping people to, for example, to gain certain skills related to traditional techniques, which will later enable them to find the workplace or a hobby or something they can go back to the market, like making souvenirs, etc.
Thank you so much, Goranka. That was really indeed helpful, and I'm sure many museum professionals who are hearing this conversation would benefit from it, because cross learnings and partnerships are the most valuable things that today we can have with each other. Thank you again. Thank you so much. My last question is to Nobina. Hi, Nobina. Wetland communities do not share any stigma, but yes, still they are isolated and marginalized. They are at the front to bear the brunt of all acts of damage to environment and ecology that human activity inflicts due to rampant usage of resources and unsustainable ways of running businesses and industries. Nobina, how do you see museums other than keeping the record and data for study purposes of the specimen, contribute to their concerns? I will request Terry to respond to Nobina.
Hello, everyone. It's really been, I think, a wonderful morning till now, the kind of dialogues that we've really had. What comes to my mind is what Goranka, where you left. I think that is where we would resonate so much with what you're saying. What we think about a museum or an archive is who creates the archive, who creates the museum collections. So that is where the platform that we run is known as Disappearing Dialogues Collective, and what we look into is this whole idea about curating archives, which is created, co-produced, and we do not look as archives because in a country where 70% of the population, whether rural or urban, is illiterate, how do we expect that, even if we say this archive or this museum is for public use, how many people are really going to relate to it? So where does the value of a museum and archive come if it's not accessible, if it's not active to public, it cannot generate a dialogue to the limit it actually can, when the potential it holds. So looking into museums and archives not as static knowledge base, we look into museums without walls. That is the idea that we work with, like how could we create living archives? How could we work with the community, the children, and think about knowledge not outside the context, how the context in itself could help be a part of that archive. So taking that into our mind, like we have been working with the children and the community to actually look into how their everyday practices, because East Kolkata wetlands, it's a unique place because it actually, through their traditional practices and collective management practices, they have been treating the sewage of the whole city. They have been serving the city through their practice, and they have been actually also making the city as a ecologically subsidized. So they are restoring the ecological balance, as well as they're making it economically subsidized, because they are providing fish, they are providing farm products. So through their practices, they have been very active to actually serve the city. But in that sense, the city does not acknowledge it. The city does not actually give its due value. And today, the community is actually going through a lot of crisis because of this, whether it's encroachment or development practices, the way we are actually looking into communities. So from that point of view, we've been looking into that what museum could actually do for this community. Could museums play a role of instilling pride and ownership? And in that context, we have been trying to actually bring in their voices into the museums, and bringing in, highlighting their everyday practices through exhibitions, through workshops. And even our workshops, we're trying to not just making a workshop that is skill development, but also to add in address their challenges, because there's a lot of challenges that they have. There was a workshop that we designed known as No Waste Workshop, which dealt with the waste, the organic waste and the plastic waste that is locally, because you do not have services that pick up the waste from there. There's a lot of dumping of waste that is happening in the wetlands. So we thought, how could we do that? So we used banana, a paper making workshop, which we did to use the local resources, things like that. And then we are now looking into how we could create wetland ambassadors who could actually take up the initiative and could actually help in the restoration of the whole space, and how we could build in a bridge between people, stakeholders, whether Kolkata Center for Creativity has also played an important role there. Last year we had an exhibition where we even within the philosophy of an art center, it is great to see that they are welcoming alternative knowledge and people, and helping us bridge the gap between the city and the community. So that was our focus for the last year exhibition. And German consulate, the environmental department, the local schools, they've all partnered with us. But the whole idea is, if we really want a collective movement, if we really want to build resilience in the area, especially in the times of COVID-19, I think there's a lot of things that we really need to rethink about, focusing about environment, about humanity, about social justice, and how do we deal with all this development pressure that is around us. So,
Thank you, Nobina. Teddy, because your work somewhere is around, I'm sure around wetland also, and you interact with them at some point. So please share, how is it in your country, and how is the situation over there? How do you deal with it, and what do you think as museums we can play roles? You'll have to unmute yourself. Terry, please unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and good morning, everyone. And I should also say, because we live in a global world, I should say Namaste to everyone. And I know we live in an unprecedented time when we have COVID-19 ravaging the whole world, but it has helped us rethink how we do things, and now we are meeting more virtually than we would if we didn't have COVID-19. We would have been thinking of, can we do a workshop and discuss all these issues in India or somewhere else in the world? So yes, coming back to the issues that bring us together here is IMD 2020, which is Museums for Equality, talking about diversity and inclusion. And I was specifically interested with what our colleague just mentioned before from the archives, talking about being professionals from the archival sector, saying how do we connect between ourselves and museums, talking from the archives and museums, and creating platforms in order to reach out to our communities. I want to just specifically say that, first of all, archives, museums, and libraries do one key role in society. They provide information, bring out that knowledge that is special, that we give knowledge to society in a way that is different from say classroom work. And museums offer a platform of knowledge to society, and as Goranka mentioned, they are still considered as places where you get truth. I must say that museums in the world are actually considered as the moral lighthouse for the people, and there is therefore no best place than museums to talk about issues of equality, inclusion, and diversity. And I have listened not only to our colleague that has passed here and many others from Bangladesh and others, how they are doing their work to include others, to include the marginalized people in their museums. And it is a great thing that is being done. But there was one point I want to mention, Reena, that these aspects that have been done to show diversity, to show inclusion of people of marginalized races and people that have been abused and so on, or people living with disabilities, is not in itself the end, or to show to the society that museums are doing something that is inclusive and including others. But the museum does all this to show to society that we are what we are because of all others, and we must include others in everything that we do. That is the prime purpose, that we do not do these things not to show us as museums doing this. Museums are a platform that produce information, show people's cultures so that people can reflect about their cultures, but also they can reflect how they treat others. So we do all these things not to show who we are as museums, but we want to show this to society so that museums can promote peace in society, but also can promote harmony to societies. And that is the reason why people that deal with aspects like war, like Goranka said, they are not showed there, not just because they want people to be taught about what happened, but they must learn something out of it, learn to be people that live with peace, that live harmoniously with other people so that we can accept others. And beyond that, not to allow such atrocities to happen again. And that is the power of museums. And that's why we are here talking about museums for equality, inclusion, and diversity. So, coming to what Ruchira, if you allow me a minute to comment about what Ruchira said, and she is doing a great work with women that are marginalized. And I want to say, actually, that the aspects that she is doing are what us as museums would love to do. And I was just thinking, as she was saying, that there is a lot that could be done, and certainly there are many organizations that would want to bring out these aspects that she is doing. They shouldn't just end with her organization. Museums are there, they provide a platform. Go to the museums, see ICOM India, ask. There are many museums that would love to have her exhibit the things that she is doing, and they cannot just end up in one museum in India. It can go as a traveling exhibition everywhere. Ruchira, I want to say to you, this platform that we are on does not only create a platform for us to talk about the things we do, but this is a powerful network of museum professionals that is there working together for the betterment of humanity. And we are here, I can assure you, many great things could be done, because the power that we have as museum professionals is our network. And we are here as museums to promote harmony in society through inclusion and diversity. Thank you, Reena.
Thank you so much, Terry. Since we are now running out of time, I will open the floor and ask my colleague Titas to take up a question, and I'll request the panelists to keep the answer very brief. And the questions which are left to answer, we will write down to the concerned panelists and get you the answer in writing. Over to you, Titas.
Okay. So I think there is a question which is not specific to anyone, but it's given to us by Ms. Gauri Krishnan, and she's mentioning, considering museums are inclusive and safe spaces, can the museum representatives on this panel respond to how they will programmatically curate any exhibition or program to include and address the marginal audiences? Are they discussing these issues internally, or what are their constraints, if any?
Goranka, would you like to take this question?
There are various ways how museums can do that. Museums are mission-driven institutions. That also means that they are emotionally biased. They have to be sensitive to their communities, because also responsibility is there. They have to find proper answers, not only to marginal groups, also the large strata of society have been actually put today in difficult positions. So what our colleagues have mentioned, like Nobina, you have issues related to sustainability as well. Sustainability today is a moral question, let us say. It requires partnerships, and this is also one key word. In this networking society of today, global society, it is no excuse that there is no excuse that we shouldn't put our strengths together and act proactively to improve situation. This is our main task. We cannot tackle all the things, but we have to set priorities. There are too many issues mentioned today. Set priority for each museum and do it properly, not with a one-time event. It will not do any good. Be persistent, be stubborn, and put in your feelings into it. That's my message.
Thank you so much. I think that's partnership. I think what you've said is very important, and I think like it's not just partnership between museums. I also think partnership with the public, and we could actually bring in different professionals, also diverse professionals all across the country who could actually become as as one to address these issues. Of course. Thank you.
It is just one word. It is this participative approach to the community.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I think there's a lot of questions for Ruchira. So I'll just mention them. One is from Anuprita, one is from Shayani Ghosh. And the question is, how can we innovate the idea of mobile museum wherein marginalized people have a say pertaining to the art they have created? This is one question that is asked by Anuprita. And then there was another question where Shiny Ghosh is asking to Ruchira what kind of inclusive activities museums should incorporate to communicate with women and children of red light area. What is the expectation? So I think these are the two questions that is asked.
Hi, so thank you for the two questions. Both are extremely important. And thank you, Terry, for the shout out, because it means a lot for you to say that you all are willing and able and want to do something. I love the idea of the voices traveling through countries, because that can be a bridge. If one group of marginalized people can express the opinions to another group of marginalized people, and then it goes on like a circle around our world. It's a beautiful thought, and I hope we can take that forward. And to the two people who just asked me questions, that how can museums create more interactive spaces inside the museums for women and children from the red light areas? They can do workshops, and the Kolkata Center for Creativity has been doing some workshops, but museums can do it. There can also be tours specially designed for women and children from red light areas. So what I call high art is explained to them, or they write down and do workshops responding to the art they see on the walls. The third is that, of course, give us space to exhibit our work there. There are many, many different ways. And now with these online things and data apps and phone learning and all of that, is it possible to even put up screens in red light areas which actually have data inbuilt into them, where we can do things with museums and women can do things for museum and go to a wider audience? I think there are possibilities, but for that we will have to have like some kind of innovation lab where we all participate together, the survivors and victims of sex trafficking and curators and museum directors, and it has to be interdisciplinary for us to come out and think about like what kind of mobile museum, what would a mobile museum look like, how can we make it really impactful. There was a man called M.F. Hussain, who was one of India's most famous artists, and at one point he painted drawings from the Ramayana, which is one of India's most important mythological texts, books. And what he did was that he put those drawings on a cart, on a bullock cart, and tried to take it into villages so that villagers could see his work. And the story of the Ramayana is known to every villager. So he was attempting to do that, and I think there's an NFDC documentary on it, National Film Development Corporation. So I think famous artists have to also think more. They have to play a bigger role than they do right now, because they are leaders and museum directors as well. So all of us have to work together to be able to do this.
Thank you. Titas, I think we have reached the time, so we'll not take more questions right now, but we will write down to the concerned panelist and get the answers to the.
If you allow me,
Jahangir ji, I will now request Jahangir ji. I will now
Yes.
request. I will now request each panelist to just say a closing statement. So that time you please say what you want to say, so that we are in time, because some of our colleagues here have to rush to offices, I know. So I will start with you, Jahangir ji. What is your closing statement for today?
My closing statement is, before that I want to share about the mobile museum. So we had experience in our national museum. There was a mobile exhibition was, and in that was there were 28 galleries, including all the departments, and he went to the village area, and it was very popular exhibition, traveling exhibition bus. And finally, I conclude that in Bangladesh perspective, with on the theme, the Constitution of Bangladesh states that all sections of people are afforded the opportunity to contribute towards the participate and enrichment of the national culture. And National Cultural Policy 2006 emphasizes the inclusion and diversity of the people every sector of cultural life. Last, SDGs as directive of inclusion and diversity in cultural. With these three dimensions, now that the first is must step overlook under representative units of the community in their gallery display. Secondly, the public programs of the museums like
Jahangir ji, we have lost you. Your signal is very, very low. It's showing. Jahangir ji, we are not able to hear you. Saurav, can you please mute Mr. Jahangir, because we are not able to hear him.
And
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll now request one by one the closing statements from the speakers. Shubhojit, what is your closing word? Please keep it very brief.
Yeah. No, I'm just keeping it very brief, because what I feel, and the discussion was really enriching in this sense, but what I feel is inclusion is actually an easy concept. Like, a child is never born non-inclusive, it's always born inclusive. So I think we just have to have all the non-normative and normative views together to have a dialogue and space, so that we create inclusive spaces more and more. So that's my.
Thank you. Dr. Vismay, your closing statement?
Okay. What I feel, museum by its term, is a place where goddess of knowledge resides. So it's a very sacred place. It is an open platform for everybody. By nature, it is inclusive. Second thing, instead of just only collecting the collections, the museum should also develop a connection with many people. Organizing activities for emotionally hurt or socially neglected people is a very specialized thing. You never know what kind of treatment you give them, and it becomes a trigger point which can spoil the entire event. So you require a specialized people to organize a specialized event. So connection is must. And I'll just give you one example that we have a theater in education program going on just nearby to our museum, and we have in past organized a theater program, including the students getting education, and underprivileged students getting education from our municipal school board, and they have written the play themselves, the scripted themselves, and they have acted themselves. So it became more effective for people to connect with the contents. So these are the kind of activities what museum can do. And last thing, museum is a policy driven place. It has its own objective and very strict budget. So we cannot do all the activities by ourselves. So connection is the must, where the other institution can come close to the museum and use its platform to disseminate their activities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Goranka, your statement?
Well, the principles of solidarity and collaboration should prevail in responsible museum work. This can help them to find relevant topics and issues, to be able to prioritize them with their society, with the people they are serving, in order to find sustainable solutions. I think that more than ever, we need joining knowledge and skills which are supported by empathy and well-being for people. This is something we really have to nurture in order to find sustainable future solutions for museums and participative role for communities.
Thank you so much. Nobina, your closing word, please keep it brief.
What I feel is, I think we've all dealt with the same thing, is museum or archives are spaces of interaction and participation, and which is, I think, most important. But breaking hierarchies is another thing I think we really need to think about, because everywhere where we approach, whether from an art and cultural angle or from any other angle, what comes in is someone or the other who is in power. How do you negotiate these power games, and how do you actually build a empathetic world, as Goranka says, that how do we build on all the skills and knowledges that we have. But besides that, we would say nurturing public stakeholdership, as well as restoring the past, revitalizing the present. That is what I would really look into for the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nobina. Ruchira, your closing words?
Thank you so much, everyone. It was a wonderful discussion. I learned so many new things. And to have a possibility of a group of people who are committed to including the outsider, the vulnerable, and the marginalized is just a heady thought for me right now. And I hope we can build on this as we go forward, and you can include voices from the red light area. So I will reach out to all of you and let's cook something up together.
Lovely. That will be really good as an outcome of this webinar. Thanks. Lastly, from Terry, what are your closing words?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to just say that, first of all, that museums are there to serve society. And today we're talking about inclusion and diversity. And I want to rightly say from the onset that there is no museum in the world that has the perfect link of how to include society in its all groups in the museum, but we all learn from each other, and therefore collaboration is very, very important. And to the museum professionals that are actually on this platform, I would like to encourage you to join ICOM, because when you join ICOM, you join a profession of museums and museum professionals where you have a vast range of resources that you can tap into, and you can learn from other colleagues. And let us, as we have already learned again on this platform, as museums, learn to reach out to the people that we need to include, but also join forces with other people that are doing already great work, and there is power in synergy as professionals that are doing everything that is good for our societies where we live. So I want to wish you, everyone, I wish you well. Please stay safe, stay away from COVID-19, and a happy International Museums Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. So with this, we come to the end of this webinar, and I would like to thank each one of you, the panelists, my colleagues, and the wonderful audience for being here in this morning. I know today is a very, very busy day. Many museums and cultural organizations are organizing multiple things. So, taking from here, we say that solidarity, empathy, partnerships, collaborations, platforms of communication, and setting priorities is something that we take from here. And we hope that this kind of platform are going to be there more and more, where we talk to the stakeholders directly and learn from them what is it that can be done more than what we are doing right now. Thank you so much. Have a nice day and stay safe and stay strong.